The flashlight shook in Agent Mara Collins's trembling hand as she stepped into the hidden room beneath the old Ramsey house. The air was cold, too cold for a basement, and the walls were lined with papers, photos, and strange markings. But the thing that froze her blood wasn't any of that. It was a videotape still sitting inside the dusty camcorder on a metal table. She pressed play. Static. Then a quiet humming. Then JonBenét's voice. Soft. Small. Afraid. "Why are you doing this?" the child's voice whispered. Mara's heart slammed in her chest. She leaned closer, her breath shaking. Suddenly, a shadow passed across the screen, tall, thin, moving slowly, like it did not want to be seen. And then, in a low voice that seemed to crawl along the floor, the figure said, "It has to stay a secret." Before Mara could react, the basement light flickered once, twice, and the door behind her slammed shut with a boom so loud it shook dust from the ceiling. She spun around. "Hello," she called out. No answer. But footsteps were coming down the stairs. Slow. Heavy. And whoever it was, had locked her inside. The tape kept playing behind her, whispering terrible, confusing things that made her skin turn to ice. Mara reached for her gun. And that's when the footsteps stopped right outside the door. The doorknob started to turn. And the last thing she heard before the lights went out completely was a voice, low, familiar, and almost smiling. "You were never meant to find this." Hours earlier, before Mara found herself trapped in that basement, she had no idea that her life was about to change forever. She thought she was flying into Boulder, Colorado, for a simple review of an old cold case. Nothing more. Just paperwork. A formality. She never imagined she would be pulled into the deepest, most confusing mystery she had ever seen, a mystery that had stunned America for decades. The case file was thick and yellow from age, but the name on it still hit hard. JonBenét Ramsey. She remembered seeing news clips when she was young, bright lights, a little girl in pageant dresses, crowds of reporters shoving microphones at police officers who had no answers. A 6-year-old child gone, and nobody ever found who did it. Now the FBI wanted her to look at it again. "Just review it," her supervisor, Director Hanley, had said. "Fresh eyes. You're good at spotting things others miss." But as Mara sat on the plane, flipping through the first pages, she already felt something strange. Something off. Something that didn't sit right. There were photos of the house, diagrams of rooms, interviews from neighbors, an incomplete list of evidence, and then, almost hidden between two reports, a blurry black-and-white picture of a door. A door that didn't match any in the house layout. A door nobody had explained. Mara marked it with a red pen. That was the first sign. When she arrived in Boulder, an officer named Ray Mendoza met her outside the airport. He had tired eyes, a patched-up jacket, and the kind of face that looked like it had seen too many things it wished it never did. "So you're the Fed they sent," Ray said, shaking her hand. "Good. Maybe you can finally help us understand what we missed." "Maybe," Mara said, even though she wasn't sure. He drove her straight to the old Ramsey house, now empty, silent, and still watched over by the city police, though no one really knew why. The house looked normal from the outside. Bright paint. Pretty windows. A yard that was a little overgrown but still alive. But the moment Mara stepped inside, the air felt different. Heavy. Like memories were trapped between the walls. She walked slowly through the rooms, living room, kitchen, hallways. Ray followed behind her, giving short comments, nothing too deep. "This is where the parents said they found the note. This is the staircase she never came down. And this is the basement door, the one everyone talks about." When Mara looked at it, her hair stood on end. It was the same door from the blurry picture. But something was wrong. The shape wasn't quite right. The edges were too clean. The frame didn't match the rest of the house. "Has this been replaced?" she asked. Ray blinked. "Not that I know of. This is the original basement door." "No," Mara whispered. "It's not." She dropped to her knees and traced her fingers across the bottom edge. Fresh wood. Sanded. Maybe a few years old, not decades. Someone had changed the door. "Ray, who has access to this house?" "Only the police," he said. Then hesitated. "And a few city workers, sometimes." "Sometimes?" she asked. He swallowed. "There have been break-ins." "What kind?" Ray looked uncomfortable. "The kind where nothing is taken. Just moved." Mara felt a cold twist in her stomach. Someone had been coming back to the house. Someone who wanted something inside it. Someone who changed the basement door. She placed her hand on the doorknob, feeling it shake slightly as if a small vibration was coming from the other side. "What's in the basement?" she asked. Ray shrugged. "Old boxes. Old toys. Nothing important." But the vibration through the doorknob grew stronger, almost like a faint humming. "No," Mara said softly. "There's something else." She pushed the door open. A cold breath of air rushed into the hallway, and Ray stepped back. The basement was darker than she expected. The first few steps were normal, but the deeper she looked, the more wrong everything felt. Shadows stretched in patterns that didn't make sense. The walls looked uneven, as if someone had carved into them at different times. And then she saw it. A tiny crack in the far wall. Just a line. Barely noticeable. But enough for cold air to seep through. She walked toward it slowly. Behind her, Ray said, "Maybe we should wait." "Get back up." "No," Mara said. If someone changed the door, they might have changed more. She ran her fingers along the crack. Hollow space behind it. She knocked gently. Hollow. She took out a small flashlight and shined it along the wall, looking for an edge. It took her only seconds to see the small hook near the floor, covered in dust but still intact. She pulled it. The wall moved. A hidden door swung open with a soft hiss, revealing stairs leading down into total darkness. Ray gasped. "What?" That wasn't in any of the reports. Mara stepped inside. Her flashlight caught something on the floor, tiny footprints in the dust. Fresh footprints. And they were small. Very small. But they weren't shaped like a child's shoe. They were narrower, sharper, like they belonged to someone walking on the very tips of their toes. "That's not possible," Ray whispered. "Someone's been here recently," Mara said. She didn't know yet that the room below held the videotape. She didn't know the door would slam shut behind her later. She didn't know someone had been waiting in the shadows for her to discover the truth. But she felt it. All of it. A deep warning inside her chest. She stepped onto the first stair. The wood groaned. Behind her, Ray said, "Mara, I don't like this. Let's call for backup." She ignored the fear in his voice. She took another step. And another. The darkness swallowed her flashlight beam until all she could see was a long tunnel of cold air stretching into nothing. Then she reached the bottom. And her beam of light finally caught something. A small metal table. A camcorder. And a piece of paper taped to the wall with messy handwriting that made her heart stop. The shadow rose slowly, stretching up the wall like a creature made of smoke. Agent Mara Collins tightened her grip on her flashlight, her heartbeat thundering so loudly she could barely hear anything else. For a moment she couldn't move, not because she was frozen with fear, but because her mind was trying to understand what she was seeing. The figure was tall. Very tall. But it wasn't standing straight. Its back was curved, its shoulders pulled forward, and its arms hung awkwardly, like they were too long for its body. Mara blinked hard, trying to clear the dust from her eyes. For a moment she wondered if it was just a trick of the light. But then it took a step toward her. A real, heavy step that made the floor groan. Mara aimed her flashlight right at it, and the shadow didn't disappear. Instead, the light revealed something worse. It wasn't smoke. It was a person. A man. But his face was covered with some kind of dark mask, stretched tight and made from old cloth, like a sack someone had stitched together in a hurry. 2 messy holes were cut out for eyes, but nothing else. No nose opening, no mouth. Just 2 dark circles staring at her. The man tilted his head at her, slow and curious, like he was studying her reaction. Mara raised her gun. "FBI," she said firmly, though her voice cracked. "Put your hands where I can see them." He didn't raise his hands. He didn't move at all. He just tilted his head in the opposite direction and took another slow step toward her. "Stop," Mara said, stepping back. "I said stop." Still nothing. Her breath quickened. The tunnel behind her suddenly felt too narrow. Too deep. She didn't want to fire, not in such a tight space, not when she didn't know what else was down here. But she was running out of choices. "Take off the mask," she demanded. The man finally reacted. He reached up, not to take off the mask, but to press a finger to his lips. "Shush." Mara's stomach dropped. Behind her, the camcorder on the table clicked softly, like something inside it had shifted. Mara stepped sideways, putting herself between the masked man and the camcorder. Her instinct screamed that he didn't want her to touch it again. Good. because that meant she needed to touch it. The man took another step. Faster this time. Mara took a deep breath and lunged backward, slamming her hand down on the table to grab the camcorder. But the masked man moved first. He reached out with one long arm, not to strike her, but to shove the entire metal table sideways with shocking strength. The table crashed into the wall, the camcorder sliding off and hitting the ground with a crack. The lights flickered above them. Mara raised her gun again. "Don't come any closer," she warned. This time, the man stopped. But only for 2 seconds. Then he rushed at her. Mara dove to the side, rolling across the cold concrete floor as his hand slammed into the spot where she had been standing. The impact echoed through the tunnel like someone had dropped a bowling ball. He was strong. Much stronger than she expected. She scrambled to her feet and sprinted toward the stairs, heart pounding so hard she could taste blood in her mouth. Behind her, the man's footsteps thundered. She raced upward, grabbing the railing as she climbed. Her flashlight bounced wildly, throwing shaky beams that barely lit the steps ahead. The man was gaining on her. She could hear his breathing now, slow, steady, like he wasn't even tired. Halfway up the stairs, she turned and fired a single warning shot into the wall. Bang! Dust exploded. The masked man stopped for a moment, crouched low like an animal preparing to spring. Mara didn't wait. She reached the top of the stairs and grabbed the hidden wall panel, trying to pull it closed. But a hand shot up from below and grabbed the panel's edge. He was trying to stop her. "Let go!" she yelled, kicking downward with all her strength. Her heel connected with the man's arm. He grunted, just once, but it was enough. The panel slammed shut. Mara locked it and stepped back, breathing hard and wiping sweat from her forehead. The basement was silent now. Too silent. She aimed her flashlight at the hidden door. It didn't move. But she could hear something behind it. Scratching. Slow. Steady. As if the masked man was dragging his nails along the wood. She backed away. Her knees shook. When she reached the main basement steps, she leaned against the railing, trying to catch her breath. Ray wasn't there. "Ray!" she called out. No answer. She climbed the steps quickly, pushing through the original basement door into the hallway. Still no Ray. But something else caught her eye. A message. Written on the hallway wall in thick, smeared dust.